The S-Cross is not a new name, but this is a new car. It's a new S-Cross, and to be honest, we're even having difficulty positioning it in Suzuki's lineup, because there's a Vitara, which looks like it's similar size. It is a little bit smaller, but not very much. The S-Cross sits above it. Pricing wise, this is only a couple of grand more at the entry level in Ireland, and yet the two ranges overlap. In terms of potential rivals, that's also not very easy to pick actually. When we drove this car initially at its international launch, we put it up against the likes of the Nissan Qashqai, Hyundai Tucson, but it's cheaper than those cars. It sits below them, and yet it sits above cars like the Hyundai Kona and Nissan Juke, so it's in between. That's probably no bad thing. It gives Suzuki a unique perspective. The lineup is fairly small, so it's not difficult to understand. Suzuki calls it a hybrid. It's actually a mild hybrid, which means it's a very fancy stop-start system. It can recuperate a bit more energy than usual, but this hybrid badge is a small bit misleading perhaps. Regardless, it's a 1.4 litre petrol engine underneath, and front-wheel drive this model is. You can get manual, automatic, and in time you'll get four-wheel drive too. One thing that does differentiate the S-Cross from the Vitara is the boot. The S-Cross is quite a bit bigger. Suzuki says it's 430 litres back here. That includes what's underneath the false floor, so you can have two levels for the boot floor. If you have it in its upper level, the back seats fold down and it's a flat surface. Other than that, there's a couple of alcoves side to side, and you've got a 12-volt power socket here, which is quite useful. Overall, it's quite practical. The practicality continues in the back seats actually. It might not be as big as cars, the Qashqai and Tucson, etc., but the back door is open quite wide. Decent legroom here. I'll sit in and show you in a minute. Now, I mentioned the folding seats. They fold down. It doesn't look flat here, there's a step, but when the boot floor is at its upper level, actually it is one flat level. It isn't a particularly wide car, so don't expect to be getting three adults comfortably in here, and the same for three car seats. Two car seats only. It has ISOFIX points. When you're only using two seats, you've got an armrest, you've got two cup holders here. I will note there are no air vents back here for the passengers and no USB ports and everything, so it isn't that luxurious. So I've sat in here behind my own driving position. I'm about 5'8". As you can see, I have loads of foot room, plenty of knee room, and decent headroom as well. So pretty good for carrying an adult behind an adult as a driver and a passenger. The only thing I will say is width-wise, as I mentioned, it's not that wide. I don't think three adults are going to be comfortable, but for four people, it's really not bad. In the front seats, it's not bad either. It isn't massively spacious. Again, the width might be an issue for bigger people, but good visibility, a reasonable amount of adjustment actually. Steering wheel goes in and out, up and down, as you'd hope. There's lots of adjustment on the seat. Decent, easy to get comfortable, and good visibility. Now, the plastics might not be to everybody's taste. If you're coming for a European car where there's touchy-feely, squishy plastics, you're not going to get that here. It's a bit harder in most places. There are a few places that it's a bit more textured. Most of it is quite hard and brittle, I would almost describe it as. It probably means it's robust, probably means it'll last a long time, and I think people who buy Suzukis will probably appreciate that. They'll also appreciate that the specification is quite decent. So this car has got dual zone climate control, got heated seats for the passenger and the driver. Now, the touchscreen is here, and people will like that it has one perhaps, but it doesn't have the latest cutting edge graphics or anything. It works fine. It's got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so people will be happy with those things. The digital instruments themselves, or rather part digital instruments, are clear, easy to read, and there's a central section, which is the digital part I mentioned, that is quite adjustable, so you can scroll to lots of different menus and show way more information than anyone will ever want. It shows the torque and power split, for instance. Not really something that you'll want in this car. Manoeuvring the S-Cross, actually, you really notice it's got a great turning circle. It's quite useful. It feels like a short wheelbase, and actually that translates into when you're driving it out on the road as well, because it feels agile somehow. It's a bit of a surprise on the road. It's not a car that somebody seeks out for driving thrills or anything, but it's a kind of car that gets under your skin. It's enjoyable to drive, it's satisfying to drive, I think is the best way to put it, to be honest. It does everything well. It doesn't set the world alight with its abilities. It's reasonably quiet. It's quite comfortable actually. It's decent on the country roads, decent around town, and when you push on, it holds together. It's stable, it's trustworthy, there's plenty of grip, it's good visibility because it's quite an upright car and you sit up a bit higher. The steering wheel itself feels nice, it's leather trimmed, as is the gear shift. The rest of the car is a bit plastic. The rest of the interior, as I mentioned earlier, it's a bit hard and brittle in places. It does feel like it'll last forever for that reason, but you know, if you're coming from a European car, which is all about touchy-feely materials these days, this is a bit different to that. Nonetheless, It's not bad on the road. I mean, it's not particularly noisy. You can feel some of these bad bumps, and you can hear some of them being picked up, but it's no worse than most cars, to be honest. There's more than adequate performance from the 1.4 litre petrol engine, actually. Suzuki says that it peaks out as 129 horsepower, which doesn't sound like very much, but it also isn't a very heavy car, so it's fine, it's adequate. It's more than adequate, to be honest. So once it's up to speed, it can maintain speed quite well. Somewhat surprisingly, when you push on, you can hear the engine at work there. It feels a bit old school, like old school Japanese car. Maybe it's my age, but there's something kind of appealing about it. It's quite a bit honest. There's an honesty there. In terms of economy, the whole point of the hybrid system, of course, is to eke out those extra litres of fuel. I'm averaging 6.2 litres per 100 kilometres here so far, and I've done just over 200 kilometres. Very mixed roads, some back roads, some city roads, some motorway. So I think that's a pretty good gauge of what an average driver might get. It's not bad for a petrol car of this size. We mentioned that it kind of sits between two classes, so it's below the likes of the Qashqai and the Tucson, but it's definitely above things like the Nissan Juke. That's a good thing because you've got space, more space than the smaller crossovers on the market. Because of a good turning circle, it's very manoeuvrable, so it isn't a massive car in around town, and that extra manoeuvrability makes it easy to park, easy to position. It doesn't feel out of place in town as a lot of bigger SUVs might do. The one thing I will say with the hybrid system is when you slow down, and you notice it more perhaps at lower speeds, a little symbol comes in the dashboard to show you that it's recuperating energy back to the battery, which is great, but you can also feel it dragging on the engine, and it's actually not a particularly pleasant sensation. That aside, it seems to work okay. I came into this test wondering where the Suzuki S-Cross fit in the world, never mind the Suzuki lineup itself. And now, having spent a bit more time in it, it actually begins to make a bit more sense. It sits below the likes of the, as I mentioned, the Qashqai, Kadjar, RAV4, etc. But it's a good bit above things like the Nissan Juke and maybe even the Renault Captur. It's quite a simple, no-nonsense car. It doesn't have many frills. The interior is robust rather than luxurious. But there's a lot of people out there that just want a no-nonsense car. And this is probably worth checking out. This is potentially for them. If you want to know more about the Suzuki S-Cross and all of its rivals, make sure you check out our website. It's CompleteCar.ie. The link is in the description below. And on there, you'll find it's a great resource for checking out and finding your next new car.